Oh, snap. Uncopyrighted music. It's important for your YouTube channel. You guys tell me when.
Ready to go live on YouTube?
I'm ready to go live on YouTube. Is there like a welcome on YouTube?
There is already a live.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to be live.
Where do I look to talk to my YouTube people?
This guy.
That guy?
The one with the big light on it. Look into the light.
No, this one?
The big light. Big light.
This
big
one?
Light.
Not that one.
Big light on it.
Okay.
No, they're both good. They're both fine. They both work.
Well,
Okay, we're on.
Pal says we're on.
We're on.
We're on.
We're on.
All right. Welcome, everybody. YouTube crowd live. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Yay! I just want to point out this is the most expensive event space ever. $600,000. We put this event space for you guys, so you're welcome. It's going to be more than that. We'll get to that. So I'm Paul Haley, Toronto Realtor, investor, educator, speaker. I just want to introduce some of the team. That's Jordan, the handsome guy there. There's some extra chairs for you, Jordan. And that's Carolyn in the back. And this is Ben. Right now he's our, what's your title? Strategic lead?
Yeah.
And so Jordan also has a lot of reno and investment experience. Carolyn is still renovating your condo. Are you done your condo yet?
It's almost done. Yeah, just the finishing touches. But yes, I did just do one on my condo as well.
Nice. So we are hooked on reno. So it should be like Renos Anonymous. I'm Paul, and I'm hooked on renos. So I guess first question, who here has actually done a reno? Anyone? You've never done a reno?
No.
Okay. And who? So I guess you're here because you want to do a reno, right? Is everyone thinking about doing a reno? Okay, cool. Is there any burning question you had coming here?
How not to lose money.
How not? Okay, no, that is a great point. How not to lose money?
Yeah.
How much will it cost? Anybody jump in? Anybody on YouTube?
The right renovation team, because that could be like that.
How to get the right renovation team, right?
Reno to sell versus reno to live.
Reno to sell versus reno to live.
What in a renovation adds value?
Okay. Anyone else?
How do you plan a reno?
How do you plan a reno? That is a good question.
Those are things to avoid.
Some things to avoid in a reno. Okay, I'm just thinking if I'm covering that. I think I am. But come back if you haven't heard at the end. Okay, cool. So, based on that, I got a fancy laser pointer. Oh, I gotta turn it on.
How to finance it.
It works, but how to finance it? That is a great question. Okay, so the first question I would have for myself is why would you want to buy and renovate, right? So really, there's kind of three main benefits, and it kind of talks to some of your questions. One is you get exactly the house that you want or the investment property that you want. You can save money by doing it, and I'll get into that. And you create equity, right, to your point. But it's challenging, right? It can be very stressful. Believe me, when our roof got ripped off, Shelly and I are serial renovators, but, there's still like a pang of, I just ripped my roof off, right? How do you finance the renovation, right? So that can be a trick. Finding the right property, if you don't already own it, how do you find it and buy it? Finding the right team of professionals. I think someone asked that question. And then where do you live when the reno's happening, right? Luckily, we had an investment property that we could move to, but sometimes that's not an option. And loss of income, right? If this is an investment that you're renoing, Jordan knows that all too well right now. Jordan's doing a big reno on Lansdowne. You're not making rent while you're doing that, right? So that's all important. So this is kind of what I'm going to cover today. This is just open, fun on YouTube. Just jump in if you have any questions. I got people there that'll raise their hand and say there's a question. Darren knows me well. He's been to all my events, so he's not shy to speak. Okay, so the first question, you probably have in your mind, or one of the questions is, what can you actually build in the city of Toronto? And I'm talking about residential properties, not commercial. That's a different zoning, different situation. So, typically the big things you can do is you can add a third floor to a certain height restriction. Laneways and garden suites. Garden suites aren't actually legal yet, but they're supposed to come out in November. But laneway suites are. You can do like rear additions typically. Sometimes you can, go out further. I mean, you can knock the whole house down and start fresh. Secondary suites, so you could add like a rental suite. We have one in the basement here. And then there are restrictions, right? So GFA is gross floor allowance. So just a quick primer on what that means, because it comes up if we go out looking for properties. So typically, you measure the property. So say this property was 20 feet wide by 100 feet deep. That's 2,000 square feet. In this neighborhood, you could build a 2,000 square foot house on that without going to committee. If you're adding an addition, it's an extra 9%. Some areas in the city are 60%, and some areas are 80%. This neighborhood is luckily 100%. We did actually have to go to committee to add this, just so you know. And I'll talk about that process in a little bit. And, to Darren's point, you said, you don't want to over-renovate, right? So the beauty of this neighborhood is I can spend, and we'll crunch the numbers, I can spend $700,000 on this house and still make money, right? Still be underwater? No. I don't know what the expression is, but, we can still be equity positive, right? But some neighborhoods, especially if you go too far north, you buy a house for $1 million, you put in $1 million, and then you're priced out of that neighborhood, right? So, part of what we're going to talk about is you have to be careful not to do that kind of stuff. Make sense? Any questions on what you can build? YouTube audience?
I have a question. You said that the GFA is if your square footage of your land is 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Then you can build 2,000 square feet of house, but it's on one level or 2,000 square feet of footprint, and then 3 levels. Yeah,
great question. It's 2,000 square feet above grade, so the basement doesn't count, and it could be over 3 floors. It could be as many floors as you can build, but typically you max out on height. So
if you build the entire property and go 3 stories up, then you could.
No, but it's complicated. Yeah. So there's actually the length of the building. There's maximum of 17 meters for most houses. If it's a triplex, it's like 14 meters. So there's tons of restrictions. So, and we'll talk a little bit about why you want to work with the right professional, because honestly, that stuff can get you in trouble if you don't buy the right house, right?
So then 2,000 square feet is over the entire house.
Is over the entire house, and that's because this neighborhood has 100%. It's R1, but there's some that are R. Actually, when you go on the other side of Dundas and it kind of jogs down, and then that side of College, that's all R.6. So it's 60%. If that makes sense. Great question, Helen.
We have a question online.
Historic, our first question.
Woo! All questions!
Technology works.
Paolo Parafinowicz, Fianowicz asks, do city development charges apply when adding additional suites?
That is a great question, Pav, I'll call you. So typically your first, okay, so I was going to explain this a little bit. So there's a difference between triplex, duplex, secondary suites, and Jordan and I are actually going to host an event where we talk about specifically how to buy an investment property and how to look at, what's a legal triplex, all that kind of stuff. But just so you know, like the code is very different on a triplex, a duplex, a secondary suite. It's typically a bit more lax on a secondary suite, for lack of a better word. Like you don't need a fire door, and there's a whole bunch of different code. But once you go past one secondary suite on a single family, typically then you'll have to pay development charges. So they call it cash in lieu of parkland. We actually had to pay it on the property we turned into a triplex because we added a unit, and it's based on square footage. So without getting too complicated, the answer is Yes. And when you're doing that, that's part of the thinking, right? That's part of what we would help you with, right? Make sense? Great question. So, can you really save money doing a reno? That's kind of the big question, right? So, really, I think the benefit if you're going to live in a space is you can really get what you want. You can really maximize your dollar, right? And that's primarily because the properties that you're going to buy to renovate are actually, they're not that marketed that well typically, right? Like if you go to buy a fully finished house, it looks nice, then they're going to get tons of offers. It's going to be a big battle, right? But the properties that we buy for people that they're going to renovate, typically it's an estate sale. The realtor's taking pictures with their phone. It's not well marketed. The pricing strategy is kind of messed up. So those properties are easy to buy below market value. So then when you buy it and renovate, either you've created a bunch of equity or you get a bigger house for your budget, right? And so online we have a bunch of examples on our YouTube channel of houses like, where we've gotten the house under $1 million in this neighborhood. Jonathan, we got a great house. Gonna call you out. There's a video of Jonathan in it. We got his house all in for under $900K, which is amazing, and he's got a rental suite. So we've done a bunch of these properties. I actually wanted to show you one quickly in the neighborhood. And I like to call this one the perfect reno because the dollars they spent on this reno, they only spent $70,000, but it was like the perfect, every dollar added a ton of value. And so, you can see it was actually kind of a boarding house. I don't think it was officially a boarding house, Jordan, was it? But it was, it was a room. Yeah, it was pretty rough, right? And they just listed it. And they did this weird reno in the basement, and they were only half done. So that's what I mean about like a property that you can get under market value because it just didn't look very nice, right? And then, so we bought it for 1.13. They spent $70,000. There's a video online if you're curious. And it's night and day. It is like a nice single-family house with a basement apartment. It looks amazing. And conservatively, we added at least $100,000. Now, honestly, that house would be, I don't know, Jordan, like 1.5 probably. Yeah. So, they've added at least $300,000 in value over the last little while. So, as an example, any questions? Online? Oh. Okay. So, Darren's, that was your question, right? So what are the things that you do that add value to a house, right? So, the first thing, like Pav asked, what about secondary suites, right? So typically a secondary suite will add value to your house because, people are like, oh, I could buy that house, rent out the basement, and then I'm going to have, $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 to go against the mortgage, right? So that adds value to your house right away, which is exactly what you did. So square footage, so typically above ground square footage adds a bunch of value, right? So that's why I'm not so nervous doing this because we're adding close to 700 square feet above ground. Bathrooms, adding bathrooms typically adds value, so usually like a powder room or even just another bathroom. So we are adding a bathroom here. So now we're going to have...
On this floor?
Yeah, right. This is actually going to be the shower. If anyone's nervous about having shower and seeing your neighbors. Shelly is a little bit. Oh yeah, we're going to have, I don't even know how many bathrooms we have now. We got a ton. So adding kitchens or upgrading kitchens typically adds a ton of value. But be careful, like if you're flipping a house, you don't want to, splash out with the Scavallini kitchen, right? Because it might take some while to extract that value. Bedrooms, adding bedrooms typically adds value. And then, really importantly, fit and finish, right? So that's like honestly, the cheapest reno you can do is paint your house, right, Jordan? Like, when we sell houses, typically we come in and we paint. That's the first thing we do, paint the whole house. Jordan has a house on Gladstone for sale right now, and that was the first thing he advised his clients was let's paint this house, right? Just paint it white and added a ton of value. But then the interior, yeah, it's a brick on the outside, so. But the exterior too, right? Like if you saw that house. Oh, the wrong way! Don't look. See, we just painted that gray, right? And it looks like 100 million times better than that. They call that angel stone. I think it's hideous. It's horrible.
Sorry, Jordan.
Okay, so now the next question is, okay, now that you know how to add value, how do you find a property that you know you can do that with, right? That is the magic trick. So, we talked a little about zoning, so that's understanding the property size. So the flip that we'll do another event at, it's 20 feet by 152 feet, so it's a massive property. So it's an embarrassment of riches. We can do a laneway suite. We can do tons of stuff with that. And typically houses are zoned R4 without getting too complicated. It means you can put 4 units in them. You can't just snap them in. There's development charges. There's a lot of other things that go along with that. If it's a row house, they don't like more than 2, but you can still do it. Laneways or garden suites. We talked about. Unfortunately, we built our garage before laneway suites, so we would have a full laneway suite, but we do have a nice little studio back there. So adding an addition. So like I mentioned, you have to be careful of the square footage, how long the building is. Because you have to set back. New building now, you have to set back from the property line. So there's all those considerations, right? Secondary suites, duplex, triplex, is it legal? Is it not legal? Jordan and I I guess Jordan, you really saved the bacon of someone last week. We bought a duplex, so it can be complicated, right? And then Darren, this is your point, right? The after reno value. So as realtors, what we look at is, okay, I bought this, I buy this house for X. I put in this much reno. What's going to be worth when it's done, right? Now, luckily in this neighborhood, this is a $3+ million neighborhood for a fancy fixed-up house. So it's easy to, buy something for not a bad price, do a reno, and then you still created lots of equity. If you go too far in any direction, that can be challenged a little bit, right? So it's a different type of reno, right? And then, so just so you know, I don't want to get too complicated, but what happens when you go to get permits, right? So you do what's called a zoning set. It's like a drawing. You submit it to the city, and they look at it and they say, okay, you got it. Here's where you break the rules and what you want to do, right? Now, typically, if you don't want to go to committee, we'll try and do that so you don't have to. So they just say everything's good, and you just get your permits and you move on. But if they, some things like this house, we went to the committee of adjustments, and they, that's where you say, okay, we're over on the GFA, or the setback's not quite what we wanted, or the building's a bit longer than we wanted, or it's a bit higher than we wanted. So that's where it's called a minor variance. You might have heard that term. Anyone? So that's a minor variance. Now some things, like height, they tend to be a little finicky on. So if you're trying to go too high, they'll just say no. A lot of people for laneway suites, it won't meet fire code no matter what you do. So that you can't go to committee and do anything about that. They'll just say no. But some things you can go to committee. It's just an expensive process. You have to do drawings. You have to pay committee fees. So it probably adds anywhere from $5 to 10 grand to do that, and it adds time to the project. So after committee of adjustments, if they say, yeah, you're good to go, then you get your permits and you're ready to go. If they say no, which happened to us, then you go, now it's called the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, which is a big word. We used to just call it the OMB. I don't know if anyone's from back in the day, but then you got to hire a lawyer and a planner, and that's another expensive process to do the thing that you want to do. And then hopefully they say yes, and then you get your permits. Okay? Any questions? Yeah.
10 neighbors nearby the house, do you have to post that you're putting an extra floor in,
Yep.
kind of add a wrench into it, and how do you get around it?
So typically what they do, you post, like for the committee, you post a thing in your window. You have to, and you take a picture and send it to them. And then they send out a letter to all your neighbors, and then your neighbors can come and say, I don't want that. But they can't, like, it has to be a good reason. They can't just say, I don't want construction in my neighborhood, or, they have to be like, it's going to block all my light, or there has to be a good reason why they don't want it. So, just so you know.
Like it blocks the sun, or
Yeah, there has to be a valid reason. It can't just be like, I don't want trucks driving up and down the street for 6 months, or, it's going to be noisy or whatever, right? But, it's good to, like, go around to your neighbors and say, hey, I'm doing the same. Can you sign this letter? And typically you submit that letter, with your application, right? So, good question. Any other questions? Sorry, that was a lot. Was that a little boring? Jordan, chip in.
The one thing dealing with the neighbors is often when you're increasing the value of your home, they recognize that, hey, if we're going higher, then maybe I can go higher. As well as if my house was a 1.5, or this was a 1.5 and now it's going to be a $3 million home, and we're right beside it, it's going to pump up the value of my home. So there is value in also bringing that out to your neighbors, right? So sometimes, particularly if they're on the ball, they'll figure out that, hey, if he's dropping a bunch of money on his property, it's going to help my property.
Great point. And if you look, like, those two houses are being renovated, the one in the corner is being, like, this whole neighborhood is being gentrified, right? Because you can still buy a house, reno, and still be, in the money. In the money, that's what I'll call it. Not underwater, because that doesn't sound good, right?
Okay, what minor variances did you go to the committee for on this property?
For this property, I gotta be honest. So we have redone the plans for this attic, like, I don't know, Shelly, like a bazillion times. So it's kind of kept changing. Like GFA was one of them. There was some setbacks from the property line. That's a little balcony where Jordan's standing. And we actually had it going out the full way, and then we had to put it back. And originally, in our original plan, we had a balcony in the back, which looked like crap. Gross floor allowance. Area. Yeah. They call it two things, so I always get confused. But yeah, it's how big the property can be. This neighborhood, like I said, is 100%. So you can take 100%, and laneways don't count. And the basements typically don't count, so it's 100% above grade. And I think we were like 106 or something like that, like not much.
Does the balcony sticking out classified as GFA, or is that something different?
No, the balcony doesn't. So balconies, closets, there's some things that don't count.
Oh, so you have a 1,000 square foot walk-in closet? Good to go?
Yeah, that's what people do. Well, on these, like, sometimes when the roof pitches more, like they'll say, this is all closet. So, and then when the inspector leaves, they'll open it up.
Okay.
So, I didn't tell you that. there's tricks.
Some of the houses have a really steep slope, and it seems like a waste of floor space.
So that was our roof line.
Yeah.
You can see it's very nicely laid out for it. So we moved it, right, for that reason. Because then it would be like an awkward headspace. Yeah. And that's why we have all this structure running down. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. Did they end up just denying all the minor variances, like the GFA?
No. We went to committee.
Right, so you had to go down that.
Oh no, we went to the OMB for another property.
Oh.
So the other since you're interested, the other property is actually a semi, but it looks like a row. So the definition of a row is you share foundations on both walls. It's a semi, but the one wall touches the other in the front. It actually doesn't in the back. But they had it in the books as a row, and a row at the time you couldn't add a third suite. So the committee said no. We went and talked to a lawyer, and a lawyer said, well, there's a couple ways you could do it. The best way is just to go to the OMB. They probably won't fight it. But it meant we had to hire a lawyer, hire a planner, and we got it through. And then we had to pay development charges. So it was a very expensive process, but it was worth it. All right. So, how do you finance a reno? Was that you, Jacob? Jonathan, the man, Jonathan. How do you finance a reno? Okay, so truthfully, so this is our fourth reno. So we did unsecured line of credit, and you know those credit cards when they mail you like 0%. We had that going. They had the credit cards where they say if you buy stuff on this, it's only 3%. So I maxed up the credit limits. So the first few renos, we basically did whatever we could. We got whatever debt we could. Then we renoed, and then we refinanced, paid all those off, and then did it again, right? This reno, because it's significantly bigger, we're actually doing construction financing, which is it's easy to get and easy to pay off, but it's expensive. So basically what you do in the beginning is you figure out what is my budget, how much am I trying to spend, what's the cheapest way that I can get there, and then you do that, right? In this case,
Is that in lowest percentage to highest percentage?
Yeah, friends and family is really expensive. That's relationship. It depends on your friends and family. Typically home equity lines of credit are the cheapest because it's secured against your house, and then unsecured lines of credit tend to be a bit more. Credit cards, well, it sort of depends on your credit rating and all that kind of stuff.
So it's not in order?
It's not in order, no. It's in order of maybe, the easiest to, so alternative lenders are not banks like B lenders or, private lenders, construction financing. Construction financing is different. They want to see what you're going to do, and then they release, it's called tranches. You usually get 3. So you need some money up front, and then they'll give you some money as you build, and they come and inspect. We actually have to do another one soon, and then they give you more money. So no. So anything after lines of credit and mortgage, you're going to need a good mortgage broker, right? And Jordan and I and Carolyn, we work with a bunch. Some are better at sort of the bank stuff, and some are better at the private money, and it's called private money. They have private money ready to go. But like I said, it's not cheap. It's, anywhere from 8 to 10%, right? So, yeah. But if it means doing a project or not doing a project, then it's worth it. And, honestly, if you're thinking about flips, sometimes just the ease of how you get the money and how easy it is to pay off, and if you're doing a flip and you can do it fast enough, then sometimes that makes more sense. Make sense? I'm looking at you because you want to flip, so. And then that leads to how do you find the right professionals, right? Hopefully, if you're looking for realtors, you're going to work with us. But if you don't, we don't know some area, if you're going to buy a cottage country, make sure the person that you're working with knows about the thing you want to do, right? So if you want to buy a triplex, make sure work with someone who knows about triplexes, owns a triplex, right? Has done that kind of stuff. If you want to do a big reno, make sure you know someone, a realtor that has done big renos and knows how to do it and knows how to look for the property characteristics that you want. Mortgage broker, like I said, we work with lots of great mortgage brokers. You want to work with the ones that can get the type of deal that you're looking for done. Architects, same thing. Like if you're going to do laneways, you want to work with one that has done a bunch of laneways. You want to know that they know what they're doing. It's funny because architects are here today because the first renos we did without architects, and it's Shelley and I were talking about it, but when we did our first reno, if something didn't line up or I had to, we had to be the one policing it, saying, no, you can't put ductwork everywhere because it's going to look like shit. Or they would just do it and not tell anything. But with an architect, they're there, they were there today measuring, okay, the window's going to be here, the fireplace is going to be here, everything's going to line up, right? So it's a different level of renovation.
We have another online question from Galaxy Channel. Can realtors introduce clients to good contractors?
So that's a great segue. So how do I put this?
You can.
There are lots of great contractors in the city, and there's a lot of shitty contractors in the city, right? You know, Jordan knows back there. So it depends on the project you're doing, right? Like this is a very big project, so the type of contractor that work on this is different than like if when we did your basement reno. Steve, that's our contractor. He's not going to do your basement reno, right? It's too small for him, right? So, and maybe this would be a lot for Rob, the contractor you use, because you're ripping off a roof and he can't move that fast, right? So, part of it is knowing the size of the job and matching the right contractor to it. Fortunately, we have done lots of renos, and now through our clients we have done lots of renos, so we have contacts. And honestly, when Jordan called me, he's like, or that we met that electrician, and I call that guy no, because he just kept saying no. I'm like, so he's like, can we do this? No. Can we do this? No. I'm like, we need another electrician.
That's a bigger vocabulary.
Yeah, it's a bigger vocabulary. Like, let me figure it out. So I actually just texted all the people I knew that had recently done a reno and said, who do you use? Who's your electrician? And there's a girl that just on the corner there on Argyle, and she actually interviewed this guy, but he couldn't do her place, but she thought he was amazing. And I guess he seems pretty cool, eh, Jordan? Yeah. So that's part of the key is connected with a network of people that know a bunch of contractors and people, and right. So it's a great question because you want contractors that you can trust, because there's a lot of shitty ones out there, for lack of a better word. Right? And lawyers too. Like, it's funny because I tell people, you actually don't know your lawyer's any good until something happens, right? So, I mean, and Jordan and I know, because deals, they don't often go sideways, but they do sometimes go sideways, right? And you need a lawyer that knows what to do and is willing to fight. Shoot.
So, Paul, you've got a few different consultants out there, right? Can you sort of walk us through how you kind of manage a project from start to finish in terms of coordinating all of the consultants from obviously you're a realtor, so you're kind of having that side yourself, but from the planning phases to the
So you know what, I'm going to go through a process, and then can we check back and just see if I've answered your question?
Sure.
If that's cool? Okay. Okay, this just went in hours before we came, and that's Skylight 2.
And we are back.
And we're back. Okay, so great question. It's right here. It's like you're reading my mind. So here's just kind of a high level process, right, of what to expect. And this is if you're going to go look to buy a place to renovate, right? So step one is, figure out your down payment. We'll connect you with a mortgage broker if you have you want a good mortgage broker. So figure out, what are your financials, right? And then, part of that is not just how much could you buy the place for and do the reno, but also once you're done, can you refinance and take that money back out again, right? Because that's a key step in the process, because you don't want to be paying all these credit cards or high interest debt, right? So once you do that, then you figure out, okay, what am I trying to do? Do I want a 3-bedroom? Do I want a 4-bedroom? Do I want, 2 washrooms? Do I want a secondary suite? Do I want a laneway suite? figure out what all that stuff is, and then let's go find the property, right? So this is actually takes time, right? So like, I know Jordan and I like to say, real estate's a game of hurry up and wait, right? Because you got to be ready. You have to be, you have to get the listings. You have to get out there and view the properties. And truthfully, when we've gotten deals for people, it's usually not the first deal. Have you ever gotten like a sweet deal for someone the first time out, like the first offer?
Occasionally you get very lucky. But it tends not to be an investment.
Right.
It tends to be, just buying a house and a house. But,
Yeah, but when you get like the deal, you're like,
no, it's a numbers game.
yeah, it's a numbers game. Like the one, that, well, even Jordan, you and I looked at a bunch of places, but the one we're going to do a project at, we had made, I think, 5 offers before that. I saw this place. I called them, like, we got to go see this place now. But because they were ready, right? They had seen places, they had made offers, they knew what they wanted, they saw it, they're like, okay, let's buy it, put an offer, and we got it.
I think you go between second and third, back and forth, but we did anyways. We figured out what we wanted, we looked at properties, we realized that wasn't realistic.
Yeah.
We went back and figured out.
And you expanded your area too, right? I think that's what really helped, right? Like you started in the core and then.
Expectations.
Didn't want to say that, Jonathan. Moira's happy. That's all that matters.
That's right.
And then so buying the property, that sounds easy, but sometimes it takes time. And then before you close, make sure you secure the financing, right? And that includes like what you're going to do for reno, right? Because now we're kind of getting into your question. And so here's what I tell people. Like, I probably told this, I told Jordan anyway. I probably told this to you too. It was like, the day you buy the property is the day we can start planning, right? So like Jordan and I, we were in there, we were measuring. I think we did for you too, yeah. You were in there, we're measuring the property. Jordan's like coming up with all these cool ideas, and then we got it priced out. I'm going to tell Jordan's story. The judge's like, that's way too much money. We can't do that. So then we're like, okay, we don't need to move bathrooms. We don't need to do this. We don't need to move walls, but you did anyway. But
Under the point of just painting it.
yeah, no, you're doing the right thing. It's a good reno. So getting all that stuff done up front, figuring out what you want to do, so that when you close on the property, if you're going to get permits, it's a choice. You're ready to go, right? And you have, your financing lined up, you have your architects lined up, you have your, hopefully, contractors lined up, all that kind of stuff, right? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is, you've obviously done a few of these, so you're a little more experienced, but like maybe for someone that's maybe just starting out, like I'm just trying to understand the balance between like trying to coordinate all these different consultants versus just like handing someone like a GC the keys and just saying, here, like, figure it out, right?
Yeah. Don't do that. Because they won't figure it out.
One thing, Paul, you might want to point out is the point between you buy and take possession is a great time to be figuring out your trades. Or you're going to you might go through, typically when we work with somebody, you might bring in 2 or 3 different trades before they've actually taken possession of their property.
Yeah.
If it's a bigger job, then maybe you're bringing in a designer or an architect.
Yeah, so for Jordan, like we brought in an architect, we brought in a contractor, we brought in, I think that's when we met No too, right? Before you take possession. You brought in the plumber, right? So you get all those guys.
Before the house closed.
Yeah. You get all those.
Perfect time to plan and get ideas and start getting.
Yeah.
So you're using up those 3 and Paul's actually, I always put in 3 visits. Paul puts in 4 visits. Particularly on investment property or something that you might potentially renovate. Paul always puts in 4 and I change my strategy. You put in 4 visits so you can be bringing in trades. And sometimes it's really hard to get trades now. So sometimes last minute somebody doesn't show up or we use up every one of those visits to plan out.
And we usually book multiple trades. Like, we had the No come in, we had the plumber come in, we had multiple people at the same time. And I guess your question is, how do you find those trades? Talk to us. We do have a network, right? Because we've done a whole bunch of renos, and you guys have all done renos. So now we have a bunch of people that we know are good. And honestly, there's good contractors out there, and there's not good contractors out there. So, just like, I mean,
It's a web.
it's a web. Yeah. Yeah. Like, you know, you would recommend Rob, you'd recommend the electrician. Like, you know, I would text these guys and say, hey, you know, who do you use for this?
And then maybe have people that they work well with,
Yeah.
and then it goes from there.
And it depends on the size and the level of the job, right? Like, I mean, that electrician Jordan guy was actually more of a bigger job guy, but he just helped out. I don't really know why he helped out. Maybe because you're a cool guy. I don't know. But, you know, it sort of depends on the level of project, right? Or, and, you know, honestly, they're booked out, right? Like, our contractor here, I've been, like, chirping at him every day. Hey, we're going to go do Margaretta. We're going to do. So now he's like, because, you know, I'm lining him up to go do that other project. Otherwise, he'd be booked, and now he's kind of excited about it. So, yeah, and then, so, you know, basically, you start construction. It takes as long as it takes. You know, I guess I would say that this is kind of the scary point, is when you tear a house apart, like we tore this house apart. You got to put it back together. And you got to put it back together the way the city wants you to put it back together. You can't just be like, oh, you know what, I don't want to do this. You know, no, it's too late. You got to, like, if the foundation sucks, you got to fix it, right? So that's, you know, it can be a bit scary in that process. You know, and then, you know, once you finish the reno, then you go refinance, right? And then however you finance the reno, you put that money in your pocket, or like Darren would do, you go buy another place, right? Any questions on the process? Nope. Nothing on YouTube? They're so quiet on YouTube. They're just absorbing.
They're watching.
So, you know, honestly, like, you know, when Shelly and I were talking about renovating, so this is our 4th reno on this house, so we are serial in this house, yeah. Yeah, and so, like, we bought it, we ran out the first floor, the second floor, like main floor, second floor. Then we did the basement, and then we did the laneway. It's actually a garage and a studio, and the backyard. We had a big pile of dirt there for 4 or 5 years. And then, you know, when we bought the house, we intentionally turned a 3-bedroom into a 2-bedroom. I don't know if you guys noticed the fancy washroom down there, but that was a strategic choice. So our intention was always to come up and add a 3rd floor as a bedroom, because, you know, Jordan will tell you, don't make a 2-bedroom house for resale, right? Like, you want to maximize the number of bedrooms. So, you know, that's what we did, and I'll show you the numbers, but, you know, we thought long and hard about, should we just sell our house and go buy another house, right? And so I'll talk about those numbers, but it turned out it's significantly cheaper in our case to keep this house and renovate. And truthfully, you know, when we did our first reno, this was like, I don't know, Jordan, $900,000 neighborhood back in 2011, right? Now, you know, this house fully finished is going to be in the $3 million, right? So that is a different reno, right? $900,000, no offense, John, but it's a different reno than a $3 million reno, right?
Yeah.
You know, and we love the neighborhood, so, you know, we didn't want to leave the neighborhood. And honestly, if we were going to sell this house, we weren't going to buy one more bedroom. We were going to buy, like, a detached house, and that would be significantly more, right? So, and then, you know, we were just going to do the 3rd floor, but then, of course, there's scope creep. So I don't know if you guys noticed, on the main floor was that big structural beam. It's called a moment frame, so it keeps the house from going like this. We had to put that. That's code. So once we knew we had to do that, we were going to, like, rip that room. And we ended up having to rip that whole room off and redo the foundation. Once we knew we were going to do that, then we were like, well, maybe do we look at the kitchen? Because we didn't like the way the kitchen was. And then we're like, maybe, should we change the stairs? And then we were like, I don't love these floors. So quickly, yeah, exactly. Or quickly, you know, 10 grand here, quickly grew into a big project. You know, I guess thankfully we decided to rip out the floors because we had a super rainy summer and we didn't have a roof for 2.5 months. So, you know, that would have got ruined anyway. So, luckily.
Another question from YouTube. From Powell. Any recommendation on structuring payments to contractors?
That's a great question, actually. Has anyone run into that?
We did ours and installed it.
Yeah. So, typically, what you're supposed to do definitely is have like a 10% holdback. I guess the reason I'm pausing is every contractor is different. They all have different needs and wants. So luckily, the guy that's doing this place, Steve, he seems to be well financed. Most contractors are not well financed. They they can't really do anything until you give them money to go buy stuff and pay their dues. But Steve is well financed, luckily. So he's not like up. He's like, he'll build up like 50, 60 grand and be like, okay, I need some more money. Right? Most contractors would be like, no way. A lot of contractors will ask for a bunch of money up front. That really scares me. Typically you do have to give them some money up front so they can, buy materials, book their guys, all that kind of stuff. But if it's much more than 10%, that, it's a bit nerve-wracking. What did Rod ask for up front? I don't remember.
We ran through up to like 25%, like pretty quickly.
Yeah, because he had to book.
He was putting out floors and doing electrical and.
Yeah, but you also knew him through me, so you knew he wasn't gonna like.
That was honestly the biggest benefit I found from, your network is better than mine. His relationship with you is worth more to him than mine.
That's true.
He could just burn me, and that was it. But you've already done a bunch of projects. He already knows that's
a viable source of income.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So it's a great question. There's no like right or wrong, but typically, I guess I should say for lien, like hold back 10% because, and I'll have to ask a lawyer exactly how it works. But so once your contractor is finished, there's a period with which they can actually still put a lien on your house, and actually happened to us the first time because the contractor ended up going bankrupt. He went to all his clients and asked for money. We said we don't owe you any money. He disagreed, but so then they can put a lien on your house and then you have to go to court, and it's not a fun process. So to avoid that, you hold back 10% and you don't give it to them until the project is closed until after a certain period of time. Just so you know. But yeah, it could be, the payment structure could be like 10%. It could be like, with our contractors, just as we go and he spends money, he just says, okay, I need some more money. But it just, if you feel like, geez, I'm giving this guy a lot of money, and what happens if he doesn't show up tomorrow? That's probably a good sign not to give him a lot of money, right? Yeah, and luckily, so I said, one of the challenges with this is where do you live when you're renovating a project, right? So luckily, we had a rental property that we moved into one of the units, so that was pretty lucky. Oh, let me just show you quickly what the house is going to look like. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So those guys, that's the skylight right there. Those guys are sitting you guys are sitting in the shower, and that's the toilet right there. So. The bathroom?
Yeah.
No, it ends like there. And this is actually like a living room. Like our architects divide up the whole space. And then this is kind of looking from the back, so that's that big steel beam you see, but it's all opened up and there's nice skylights there now. This is the big triangle window in the front. It's going to be super cool. This is looking from the back through the kitchen. So this is going to continue kind of outside. It's like a seating area, fireplace, nice kitchen. That was part of that was scope creep number 2 or 3, I think. We're first we're like, kitchen's great, and then we're like, kitchen sucks. So now it's going to be it's all smooth lines, right? There's going to be no poles. It's going to be super cool. And then the stairs was another one where we're renovating this house, and then we're going to have these cheap, crappy stairs. Maybe we should get new stairs. And then we're like, it'd be cool if they turned.
You You made it a $3 million house.
We made it a $3 million house. Thank you very much. And then this is looking that way. So there's like a fireplace, a sink. That's that outdoor patio where Jordan's standing. Jordan, you're in the patio. You want a beer? And then that's the bed. And this is looking this way. So this shower's like there with a TV and like a sitting area. And then there's like double sinks there.
Do we have to put in that triangle to fit in with the character of the neighborhood? Or,
Yeah, you know what? That was kind of the design choice. Was like, you know, we didn't want to do a totally flat. We kind of wanted to keep the peak to sit with the character of the neighborhood. I think it's nice, right? It kind of matches all the other houses. All right, you ready for the numbers? Okay, so pre-reno, because remember this was a 2-bedroom house, right? It does have a secondary suite and like a laneway. So, you know, Jordan and I figured, well, we could probably sell this house for like $2 million, right? Not like, you know, our realtor fees would be free, but you'd have to pay some realtor fees. So rental costs plus taxes and financing costs, you're going to be at about $2.7 million. To buy this house, you know, I think, Jordan, you can argue, but I think it's going to be about 3.2, because this is going to be like magazine level done, right? It's going to be like Dwell magazine. And then on top of that, you have to pay like $130,000 in land transfer tax, right? That's a lot, and you have to pay legal. So the total price would be a little over 3.3. So, you know, I figure we're saving $600,000 by doing this reno. And, you know, for me as a realtor, I'm like, okay, that makes me feel good. You know, and I guess the question is, because this is our 4th reno, what would I have done differently? I would have hired architects from day one. You know, it depends on the size of the project. Like, you don't need it. Jordan, you don't need it. Those are small projects. But if you're doing a major reno, like, it's just a different experience. And they've thought about spaces in ways that you haven't. You know, no offense, but they're trained and they do it all the time. Just like we buy real estate all the time. We know how to do it.
Did you bring in an architect?
For this, yeah. We met some friends and we were like, oh, you guys are architects. We like your work. Because we already had plans. We already had approved permits for this. And we were like, what would you do with this space? Because honestly, it looked like crap. Hey, Shelley? It was like, yeah, this is such a bad idea. And then they, you know, made this cool balcony. And then we were like, oh my God, you guys, okay. If I could do it again, I would say start by adding the 3rd floor. Don't do it after you've already rented a perfectly good house. Because as you can see, like all the walls got wet. Like it's a shit show, right? We unfortunately had someone that told us to make this a duplex back in the day, so we're actually a legal duplex. We should have done a secondary suite. Once you do a duplex, it means you have to do different fire code. So when you add a 3rd floor and we have a metal door, and we just had the wrong people on the team. I wasn't a realtor back then. I didn't know who I know now.
So you're talking 10 years ago now when you started.
11, yeah. No, not this reno, like the first reno that we did when we added the basement, yeah. So basically a duplex is 2 equal-sized units. And like, I don't know, without getting boring into we'll do a whole thing on this, like what's the difference, but it's different code. So like with a duplex, when you add a 3rd floor, you need different level of fire rating, more expensive to translate, and you need a fire rated door, and it changes the way entrances can happen in the house and that kind of stuff. When you do a secondary suite, you don't need that stuff. The secondary suites were designed for Toronto, so people could add like an in-law suite or something in the basement. The building code is a little bit less stringent, so it's a little bit easier to do it. So, you know, it's a great question. And you can do 2 secondary suites. They just they have to be 49% of the square footage or less than the primary suite. So anyway, I don't want to bore you with the complications, but we will do a whole talk on what that is. And you know, at the time we didn't have laneways, so you know, I wish we did, because we would have probably done something different in the back.
So it was just a backyard?
When we bought it,
Did you have to eat in the garage?
Yeah, so we rent out the garage. There's like a studio back there. You haven't been in my studio?
I've seen your
Unbelievable.
Airbnb channel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we were actually in Blog TO at Airbnb. So it's pretty cool. You know, and if you want to live for free, that's the way to do it. Build 2 suites.
That's another seminar.
Yeah.
But when you bought the house, you had a garage and you renovated it into a studio, is that right?
Yeah, we had a shitty garage. It actually looks like the neighbors do if you look out the window. The one on the left, it was set back a bit, so we added 8 feet and went up to maximum height at the time, which is 13 feet. And then we had this like 30-foot garage. We're like, we don't need a 30-foot garage. We had 2 cars when we thought about it, and then we're like, we don't need 2 cars. We live in the city, so then it'd be nice to have a studio and a parking spot. So, yeah. Any other questions about that? So really, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the sign when you came in, but part of what we do is we help people buy. We help you finding the home, knowing the great potential, get a great deal. We help you with. We don't do the rental, but we can connect you with the right people. We can help you plan a smart renovation. So honestly, like a lot of people, friends, and you guys come and ask, hey, I'm going to do this. Actually, we have to go see a friend next week, Jordan, tell him what to do with his basement. Because a lot of people have the question, okay, I'm going to reno now. What do I do? Like, I don't want to spend money that's not going to have a good ROI, right? So when we're buying for people to help them do this, we're thinking about maximizing the ROI, not going above the after reno value, right? And being there for support, like, Jordan like called me at the cottage. I tore out a wall. Is that the right thing to do? And they're like, wait, I got a friend. I'll send him over. And he felt better after. Okay. So with it, like a lot of realtors, once they close the deal, they're gone, right? So we stick around. We just honestly we just like doing this stuff, right? So we stick around and help. And we're like, it's not that you have to sell, but we're always thinking, if you buy this property and renovate, how much could you sell it for, right? Because we don't want you to get underwater, especially if you're going to go refinance. You want a property that's worth enough that you can take that money out and pay off the reno dollars, right? And for Jordan has a friend idea, but we'll help you find tenants, right? So that's a whole seminar in itself, finding great tenants, but we'll take pictures, we do virtual staging, we'll set it up on all the Zumper, all that kind of stuff, so we help you guys find tenants. And if you do want to sell, we have a neighborhood sales system, like we're selling a property in Gladstone. If you're bored this week, go check out on the weekend. So yeah, we have a neighborhood sales system where we come in, and Jordan, maybe you can say what you did on Gladstone, because it's kind of a good story.
Yeah, well,
not to put you on the spot.
It was typical to many people who are, buy a house 15 years, you depend on, actually, it's my story as well. You buy a place, you move in, you plan on doing all these things to the kitchen and this, and I'm going to paint, and you have a kid, and 10 years later go by, and it's like, oh, I never did any of those things. But this particular couple, they decided to move out west, and if any of you live in the neighborhood, you might know them. They're very, very active in the community. But anyway, so when I came in, I said, well, we got to do this, this, and this if we're going to get top out. So we painted, we staged, we did a lot of cosmetic things to the house. And then, of course, when they're finished, they're like, well, we don't want to move now. But they'd already bought it, that's a beautiful thing. But literally, I'm not kidding you, they spent about $25,000, and it brought the value of the house up about $200,000.
Yeah, immensely.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
If you knew before, because the walls were brown, they hadn't been painted in 20 plus years. The kitchen was completely dated. We didn't change out the kitchen, we just had it painted, and we did all of these cosmetic things. I'm not saying we lipsticked it, but we did the things that bring you real value. You can't put a price on a good painter, I would say time and time again, professional painter. And we've staged it very well. And a place that we're targeting at 1.4 is now we're targeting at 1.6. So you would know it, you know, after it's sold, we'll do it before and after because it's unbelievable. We're not going to do it while it's on the market, obviously. But, you know, and touch wood, we'll get to that 1.6 or what have you on logistics, but it truly is like when I'm pricing it, before I was pricing it to hit the market, we're going to hold back offers, so it would have been, we're going to price it about 1.2, now we're pricing it at 1.2 to get 1.4, now we're pricing it at 1.4 to get 1.6. So it's, anyways, we're going to do a video on it.
Yeah, we'll do a whole video.
You'll see the before and after kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's part of, you know, doing targeted marketing. So we're doing the videos, we're doing the photos. We actually have a pretty big online presence, as Darren knows. So we push out a lot of, we're trying to get as many eyeballs on a property as we can. You probably noticed we have experience buying, selling, investing, and renovating in these neighborhoods, right? And we have experience negotiating the sale. And really, we're here to kind of make the whole process. It says stress-free, but the truth is, I'd say real estate is an adventure. It's exciting. There's going to be fun, exciting parts, but there's going to be like stressful times too, right? And that's just part of it, right? So, but we're here to kind of guide you along the process, right? So those stressful parts don't break you or don't, cause you too much anxiety, if that helps. Hi.
I just have a question about, I guess, your role as real estate agents. Are you able to help your client or me assess when going into a very obvious shack in Toronto?
Yeah.
And what a realistic goal is or a realistic price point in making it livable?
Yeah.
And rentable?
Yeah. No. Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. Like, we can't guarantee the rental price, but like with these guys, we'd be like, okay, Jonathan, we could get this property, probably spend 50, 60 grand. We'll make a nice basement suite. We'll, fix up the kitchen.
Every property we went through, you and Jordan were like, okay, this is what I would do to add value. Here's how I add investment. This is the potential laneway. You can do this into a basement suite. So
yeah. And while we can't guarantee that, we've done a lot of them. So
And so that the shock value isn't as bad.
Yeah.
So you're like going into it saying, okay, maybe 75 and then it's 200.
Yeah. Yeah, and we try and be careful not to like overpromise and under-deliver. We have some clients right now. They want to do this. They want to rip off a roof. So we're like, okay, well, that's a $700,000 reno. It could be less. Like you don't have to make it as nice, but at least you're prepared when you go into the purchase, right? You're ready for that. And honestly, like the exciting stuff is the house I showed you, the house Jonathan and Jordan are doing. They're spending maybe 60, 70 grand, and you're making you're making a big difference, right? Like you're making a house from like a shitty house. No offense, Jordan, but that was a shitty house. That's going to be awesome, though, right? Like what you're doing. Yeah.
but you helped us add 50, so we're out 20 grand.
Right.
50 grand got added to the mortgage.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, so he did a purchase plus improvements. So I actually paid Rob to do that, jerk. But before we closed, I had a contractor go in. He gave us a quote, and then we took that to the bank and said, okay, here's a purchase price. Here's what we're going to do for renos. And the bank said, okay. And then when they're done the renos, they came and checked and said, okay, you're done. And then they just added that money onto the mortgage. So the refinancing was a whole lot easier in your case.
Yeah.
It was already done up front, right?
Which is 50 grand was a couple hundred.
Yeah. Yeah.
At like 1.9%.
It's the best rate. That's why you do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another question from YouTube.
Shoot.
Maria V asks, if you bought a project house, what do you need to look for when determining if you should just tear it down and rebuild or do an extensive renovation?
That is a great question, Maria V. So did everyone hear the question? So like, should we have torn this house down, or should we do a reno, right? So the tricky part is when you tear a house down in the city, right? Now you're subject to all new building codes and all the new setbacks, right? So as an example, if we tore this house down, we'd probably have to start the walls about here, right? So we would lose tons of square footage just on 3 floors, right? So that's one consideration. And you've probably seen houses where they have walls and then they have them like supported to get around this stupid rule, right? So, and it's expensive to do it that way, right? So that's now the benefit of knocking down a house and building new is it's, per square foot, it can be a little bit cheaper. And you definitely get like a flat, even house, right? Like this floor is nice and flat, the back room where we just did, but you'll notice, some of these floors, it's like a Toronto house, right? They're still going to be a little crooked, so that's the benefit. So, I'd say if you're going to do an extensive renovation, it's definitely, there's no right or wrong answer. It's something that you should look at the project at the time. What's the best way to get the thing I want? And sometimes knocking the house down and rebuilding it is actually the best way. Usually in this area, probably not, just because we're on such narrow lots.
That tends to be like Mimico.
Yeah, you see lots of teardowns in Mimico, right?
Big lots on smaller house.
Yeah.
World War II home on a big lot.
Yeah, or developers will buy up like a whole bunch and then knock them down. But just so you know, that's a change of zoning. That's a whole different ball of wax, and it's really expensive. It's like $1 million just to get started. You probably have been involved in that a little bit at Double D. But yeah, we're talking really residential renovation, which is a separate thing. Carolyn.
Hi.
Hi.
I just am voicing this because I know there was a couple people when they came in that had asked about this. What about, obviously not in this neighborhood, but if you were to buy Mimico and say you had a large lot and wanted to tear that down and sever that lot, do you know how easy or hard it is to do that?
Yeah, so you get like a 50-foot lot and cut it into.
Yeah, build 2 homes.
I don't think that those are. I mean, it's not a slam dunk, and it's not like it's not going to be like 2 weeks and you get your permits. Yeah, it's actually something. Sometimes Jordan and I be out with the clients. We saw a piece of land probably 4 months ago that was massive. And quickly I called our architect. It's like, what can we do with this thing, right? And we figured you could easily build probably 7, little townhouses on it, right? So, so yeah, I mean, it's absolutely makes sense because you can buy a lot for, say, I don't know, in Mimico, probably 1.4 now, and then divide it and build 2 houses and sell them each for 2.5. Actually, there's a, if you guys are interested in laneways and development, there's a T-shaped lot on Dover Court that tees into the laneway, so there's 3 houses on a laneway. So they took the house, and it took them a long time. It took probably about 3 years, I think, wasn't it, Jordan, of permits. But he made a new house and 3 laneway houses, and so he bought it for, I think, 1.5. He sold everything for 8.5. So there's money there.
And with laneways, you can only rent them. Can't sell a whole laneway house.
That's a great question, Jacob. And I've met this policy wonk guy who was convinced you can sever them. So the truth is, I don't know the answer. But all the people I talked to, except for one guy, said the city really doesn't want you to sever. Part of it is the services all run through your property, right? So your plumbing, your electrical, the drain all come through your property. So severing it then gets complicated because there has to be some kind of easement on it. But the city doesn't want you to do that, but some people are developing with the idea that they will sever it.
But also, some of the laneways that are really wide, where the city is, where you can actually put your own services in through the alleyway, that, because there's one place that's near Borden,
Yeah.
and they've set up a whole bunch of laneway places in the back that are serviced directly by the alley.
Yeah. So, and honestly, we have a rental property, and there's a big garage that abuts it. That's a separate piece of land, and we're trying to buy that. And the first step is figuring out, could we just develop that as a 3-story house, because it's worth a lot more. But yeah, you have to run the services down the alleyway, and that's like, I don't know, $100,000, let's call it. And if you could do more than one, then you could, defer the cost to cost a whole bunch. But yeah, so it's possible, but you kind of have to have deep pockets. And personally, I wouldn't develop a laneway with the intention of that you're for sure he's going to be able to sever it, because it's going to be difficult. But what you could do is sell your house as 2 or 3 units, right? And just get people to come in and buy, yeah. Yeah, which we talked about. Make sense? So that's the end of the show, unless there's more questions. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks, Shelly, Jordan, Carolyn, videography team, Ben, Jared, if you guys need a videographer.
Videography team, everybody.
Ben and Jerry, yeah. And that guy.
I've got a question for you.
Shoot.
So for our situation,
Yep.
we've already rented the house. We've put in a basement suite. We have a garage with a potential laneway.
Laneway suite. Sorry.
What's the process of financing that to get that going?
So yeah, it's a great question, because now you built a bunch of equity because your neighborhood's gone. Yeah, so I talked to Ruth and say, give me some money for a reno, for a laneway.
Just arrived.
Well, I mean, the best thing to do, like the cheapest, is go refi, get the money, and then build a laneway, and then refi again. Worst case, do a HELOC or something, use that, and then do it again. Are we building a laneway?
Yeah, that's the plan, right?
We're going to do this in your laneway, by the way.
There's a guy behind us who's building it himself.
Himself?
Yeah. While he's in construction.
Oh, okay.
I live in a different neighborhood than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got his drill and it's a different kind of drill. It's going a bit slower.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for coming. I'll follow up with an email. And if you have questions, if you want to talk turkey.
Say bye to the street.
Oh, thanks for coming, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, that one. Send me an email if you have any questions. Happy to help. Happy to talk. We'll hang out.